Okay, so today we are doing the first of these Solibri Assist webinars. We've put together a couple of webinars in response to what we've found as the world goes through this COVID-19 coronavirus crisis. Basically, there's a lot of people now working from different places. They're working from home, they're working with equipment they're not familiar with, so we're finding a lot of support requests and emails and things coming in because suddenly there's people having to administer accounts that they've never done before. So this session is specifically looking at the administration side of Solibri. Tomorrow I'm going to do a second session, same time, 24 hours from now, and that will be looking at the first steps, which is all about installing the software and where you get it, how you install it, how you set it up to first begin, and then actually a little bit of configuration within the software. Again, because of the coronavirus thing, there are people that suddenly are using different machines, they're working from home, they're maybe using their own machines, and they maybe don't have the backup of their normal situation where there's somebody that does that sort of thing for them. So it's trying to just address these and make it a little bit easier as people adjust to this new way of going about things for now. So what I'll do is I'll skip on. There is a bit of PowerPoint, and then I'll show you some stuff live on the Solution Center as well. So what I'll do is just skip over to show you the next slides, which is basically the agenda. So there's a lovely little picture of me. Wow. But what we're going to do is talk about the Solution Center, talk about the different parts of it. So that's the product view, which is where we get the products, some stuff to talk about there. The admin view, which is where we then do the main type of tasks that we're actually going to be looking at. So that's the user-based tasks, the licenses, the user pools, etc. And then there's a few notes at the ends of other things to be aware of or other things that need to be set in the background. So what we're going to do to begin with is just look at the Solution Center, and you may have heard of it, hopefully you've heard of it, but effectively the Solibri Solution Center it's the whole back end of Solibri. It's what makes the licensing possible, it's what makes the assignment possible, it's what makes the user management possible, and it's where we can go and track usage and see who's online and how much they've used it, etc., etc. Essentially, it is a cloud-based system. You can access it from anywhere. You don't need to be inside an office or on a particular network, so you can get it from anywhere at all. So to get into the Solution Center, you do need a couple of things. You need your username. You also need your password. In terms of the username, that typically is it is an email address. Typically, it's a company email address, but there's no reason why you can't have additional email addresses on an account as well. You can only link one email address to one Solibri Solution Center account. So for today's purposes, you'll see actually I'm using a bunch of weird Gmail email addresses. Those are just temporary ones that we set up for this to be able to demonstrate. If I was to try and use my own ken.good@solibri.com account, that would be inside our UK Solibri account, and it's full of all sorts of different stuff to do with training and support and various other bits and pieces. So I've set this one up. It's a new account, so you can see it from fairly clean. We are starting from the standpoint that an account's already established. We will look at doing another video to go online to show new accounts being set up, but this one is just going to start from the very beginning. I'll do one more bit and then I'll actually go and sign in so you can see what we're talking about. So the only other thing really to talk about here is we do occasionally get people with issues signing into the Solution Center. Usually they are down to some sort of caching error. So there's something already in the browser that's blocking cookies or doing some sort of thing. Also, we find that the Solution Center works best with the main web browsers. So personally, I like Chrome, Firefox, Edge, Safari, whatever the sort of main ones are. When you start going slightly off grid, we run into some other issues because they have their own little foibles and things. So when it comes to something like a sign-in error, then usually what we do is go and advise that you clear the cache, make sure there's nothing already in there. One of the things I tend to do, because it's a nice, quick, easy one, is just to switch to an incognito. It's a Chrome thing, or a private tab. That way, that hides a lot of the stuff that's already cached within the main browser part. But the other thing to do is just use a different browser. So if you have problems with Chrome, go to Firefox, go to Safari, go to Edge, whatever it happens to be. So what we'll do is switch across to add, funnily enough. And typically sessions expired. So let me just go back to the login. So what you see is it happened because I was already logged in. Let me just log out so you can see it again. So basically, there is not much to this. There is your email address, your password. There is this forgot password link. That is quite important. I'll come back and talk about that later. You can also tell it to remember me, but I'm just going to sign in for now. So once I'm signed in, the first thing we see is the product view. And in fact, let's switch back to PowerPoint. So we got past the first stage. So the first thing that I was actually going to talk about is the landing page. So that's the thing we see when we first go here. And there's one little thing that I need to point out. So we are talking here about administrators. So the administrators are the people that have got the back end access to be able to go and assign users, assign other administrators, make changes, etc., etc. But the landing page looks very familiar or very similar, whether you're an administrator or whether you are a regular user. So if I actually switch out to Firefox and have it alongside, ignore the bit that says the session's expired. What you'll see is the only real difference is this area here, the product view, and go to admin view is missing. So as a regular user, all you see is the product page. You don't see the back end, you don't have access to get into the admin tools. So I'm doing stuff on the second screen to get it ready. So if I switch back out to PowerPoint again. So a couple of quick things. When we actually come in here, there's a couple of things you see. Operating system is shown. The Solution Center detects your operating system and it will give you the tools relevant to what you're doing. That doesn't mean you can't switch to download the Windows tools from a Mac or vice versa, so I'll show you that in a second. The main page that we see, or the first page we see, is the product page, and this is where we get the downloads for the most recent and the supported builds of the software. So let me just jump back across again and actually go through some of this. So I mentioned the operating system. So under here, I can actually switch out and manually choose Windows operating system. If I do that, I get a couple of extra options for the BCF manager here. Those are because those are Windows only tools. They don't show up in the Mac version. The different builds, we have one build from Mac OS, Windows 32-bit, which there's barely any machines left these days that are 32-bit. So it's usually Windows 64 or the Microsoft installer for Windows 64 as well. If you want to download an actual product, you'll see Solibri. There's actually Office, Site, and Anywhere. They all have a download option, but what they'll do is download the very latest supported version. So this is 9.10, so that's Solibri Office, and then build number 6. So if I grab that, that'll start the actual download process. So I'm not going to go through with that one. If you need access to an older version of Solibri Model Checker, then we do give access to 9.9 and 9.8 as well under here. There's a bunch of the rest of the tools. You can see what they are. You just go and grab and download what you need. the Solibri extensions, the really important thing here is that you have to purchase the extensions to go with your Solibri licenses to assign to the users. So in here, what I did, for example, was come in and purchased the Kobe platform, the UK resources. I'll leave the US resources just so you can see the difference in a second. And the other one that I grabbed was, in fact, let's do the smart board because I haven't done that one. So I've just picked a few of these. Because I'm the administrator, they just say free. If you're a regular user, they will say wish. And then I'll show you in the Solution Center where that actually pops up. And you can see wishes as an administrator. So from here, with that little lot selected, what I need to do is go to the basket. And what we need to do here is actually go through the process of purchasing these products. Now, these ones are all free, so there is no cost. You don't have to provide any details, but you have to go through the process as if you were making a purchase. Some of the tools you will see, depending on the regional variations, there will be costs associated with them, so that's obviously a different thing. But for here, what I need to do is purchase a number of licenses. Now, in fact, this account has 2 physical Solibri licenses, but we might end up with 10 different users. So what I can do in terms of assigning these products is we can add on another. I've already bought 2, let's buy 2 more. So that'll allow me to assign this to 4 different people. So we purchase these, say next. This then just confirms what we're about to purchase. We have to say that we've read and understood the terms. Obviously, you guys will take the time to read every single page in there, but I'm not. So we just confirm, and what that does then is pushes into the back end and into the assignment area where these tools now become available. But there's a few bits, just before I go to that, there's a few bits that I will go through first of all on the products view. So that was, or we had a look at the products where we can download whatever version we want to grab from here. We had a look at the extensions. So the final section is this training and documentation. And in here, these effectively are just links to download. So I picked the Kobe extension. So here are the installation instructions. This is the actual Kobe extension, the reference guide. So literally you just pick download and that'll download a PDF for you, and it's fairly straightforward from there. It's also important down here, there is this Solution Center admin guide. So that is attached to the webinar, the emails and things that have gone out. So you should have a copy of that. That is the latest version. But in the future, it's worth keeping an eye out in here for any updates, and you just download the latest version from in this training and documentation area. So there's a few bits there to take a look at. What I'll do is just jump back to the PowerPoint. So I've gone over a couple of these bits here. So the purchase process from the extensions, the training and documentation, the downloads that we can get from in there. The only other thing is only the buyer has the option in the product view to go through that process of doing the buyer part of it. So it's a role within the Solution Center, which I'll show you in a couple of minutes when we actually look at the users in there. The only other bit on that page is the fact that you can log out. So the email address is blurred out here, but there is a pull down and there is a log out option. So if your security systems, if you need to be security conscious, you can log out if you need to. Any other questions? Okay, so looks okay. There's a question about a Mac user. That's probably something we'll come back to separately, but hopefully that's okay. There is a question about somebody having made a wish. How do you get informed? The short answer is you don't. What we encourage people is to check in regularly, and in here you can see in this screenshot there are wishes associated to these different products. What we encourage during training sessions, etc., is the individual users to contact their administrator if they have an urgent wish for something, but otherwise it's a case of having a look in the Solution Center and you will see wishes at different places. So I'll try and show you an example of that in a second. So what we'll do is we'll move on to the actual admin side of things and what we actually see there. So when you switch to the admin view, the first thing that you typically see is the account page. And this just tells you details like your company name, so hopefully that's familiar to you. There'll be an account number, what your registration country is, and then there'll be the administrators listed here nice and clearly so that you know who else is an admin. We always encourage at least 2 administrators, the reason being that especially now things like coronavirus kind of snuck up on us, and there's people that suddenly don't have internet access or are not able to get online for whatever reason. If we only have 1 administrator, that's then a problem if that person's not able to get online. So it's preferential to have at least a couple of administrators so there's a backup. What we'll take a look at in this next little section is just the tasks that we perform for the users, for the licensing, the user pools and the statistics. So let's take a look at the user side of things first of all. So in here, the primary thing that we're going to look at, or the first thing we're going to look at, is just adding users. And in the process of doing that, we'll look at the details, we'll talk about the roles, and then we'll talk about the pools of licenses that they're going to use. So let me switch out because there's a few things to take a look at here. So let me go to the admin view. And in here, as I say, the first page is just this primary page. I am the administrator right now. I'm the only administrator. As I said, it's better to have more than one. So this is an account that was only set up yesterday with these temporary emails. So what I'll do is go to users, because this is where we manage the users. So I've already added a couple of actual users, and we can see the details in here. What I'll do is I'll add a further one. So let me just go here. And literally all we do is press add, and this is how we individually add people. So if we have only a couple of people to add, then that's not a problem. So at this time, what I'll do is I'll be formal. I'll call myself Kenneth. Kenneth Bad. And the email address I'm going to use, if I grab my notes, sorry, I need to copy this from down here. We will use that one again. Paste that in. So I can't use the same email address, but fortunately Gmail has got this really nice thing on it where you take your main account, you stick a plus on it, and then you can add anything you like. So I can actually use one email address and stick a load of different appendages on the end of it, and off we go from there. So we stick that in. The reporting identity defaults to the email address. So this is what shows up on the reports that are created from inside Solibri. The users have no control over it. This can only be set by the administrator here. So what I'm going to do with that is just say second admin account. That is more for my information here, but what that means is that any reports would go out as second admin account. So if I'm only going to use this as an administrator account, that's not a problem, but really what I should probably do is put on some sort of, I think I know how to spell my name. I'll stick admin on the end of it. So whatever way you want to actually type that out. The details then, if we don't tick anything, then this account is just a regular user. So they can sign into Solibri, they can use Solibri, they can sign into the Solution Center, but they can only download the products, wish for the extensions, or pick any of the documentation to download as well. If we set them as a buyer, then they can also purchase the products within the extensions. But if I want to have full control, then this also needs to be an admin, so we just tick this as well. If I don't do anything else, this user will only have access to launch Solibri anywhere. But if I want them to use a particular product, so if I have site licenses, I don't have any site licenses in this account, but if I did, we could assign a pool here. If we assign site and don't assign office, then they can only use the site product. But in this case, what I can do is choose to push them into one of these license pools. So I'll come on and talk about license pools later, but I'll put them in the regular Solibri Assist license pool. So that's the main company pool. And in the country they're based in, we can pick this here. Just set that as it needs to be. So if I click save, that then drops in the user into this part here. They will be added an account now as a second user, but there's a second part has to be gone through, which is this particular user with this email address will now have received an email from noreply@solibri.com, and that's an invite for them to register their account, set a password, and finalize their registration process. If they've already used this email address on another account, then as I completed this part here, there would be a message saying they're already on another account. Do you wish to invite them to migrate along those lines? So you can confirm that, and then the email that they receive is just a slight variation that basically says you're on account XYZ. Would you like to move to account Solibri Assist? Or something similar to that. So this is how we add individual users. The roles are important. The reporting identity, as I say, this bit here is what shows up within the reports from Solibri. But that effectively is how we add an individual user. However, if you have 20 people to add, or even 5 people to add, that can be a bit of a slow process. So one of the options we have here is to export what we currently have to Excel. So if I stick that on my desktop for now, and just call this Solibri Assist Users, I bet it starts on the wrong screen. Oh no, it doesn't start at all, sorry. Click to open. Yes, started on the wrong screen. So let me resize this. So there we go. This is what we get by downloading the Excel sheet. And effectively what we can do here is we can stick in name, and this time I've got a different email address. Paste that in here. Cancel. Paste that in there. We can set what pool they're going to be part of. And this time maybe they're part of this pool here. They're in the UK, so we'll just take that down. And we give this a different name. And then here we can set, by putting across, do we want them to be an admin, do we want them to be a buyer? Or actually we have the option here to deactivate users as well. We'll just put a cross in here. So if we want to take somebody off the system and restrict their access completely, we can do that in here. But effectively what I do is populate this sheet, save it. I'm not going to go through the process, but what we would do here is go and choose the file, upload it, and that'll then process and populate the users, send the invites, and just speed up the process for everybody further down the line. So it's a little bit easier to manage multiples that way. So that's how we set an individual user and add an individual users. When it comes to modifying, we can set the various different options like, sorry, my mouse is a bit sensitive. We can edit the details, we can deactivate and reactivate. So that's pretty much a similar process. I'll just show that really quickly. If I take this one here that I've just added, we have the options now appear to edit and deactivate. If I click on this user, wrong one, this user, there we go. This user cannot be deactivated right now. And when it comes to editing, well, let me edit everything. Just let's have a think. Oh, it does allow me to edit, that's fair enough. I can't change the email address because that is the registered email address. We could change some of the names in here, so this should actually just be regular old me because that's what I want to report as. But if I save that now, you see the name's updated here, and that's pretty much it. So the editing part is fairly simple. Some people are not able to be edited or deactivated, and the reason for that typically is if we look at the user license details, that license is already in use. So the Solibri UK project user, which is this one here, is the one that does say, then we need to refresh this. I need to check what Solibri is actually running. Of course, the one that I can't deactivate is the one that I'm signed in as. So I'm confusing myself here because I've got so many things open at the same time. So let's just jump back. So we can edit users, we can deactivate and reactivate. The important bit with that actually is if I take this user here and deactivate, it tells me, are you sure? So yes, that takes the user out of the list, but actually deactivated users are just sitting in the background and they can be reactivated at any time. So some companies, they will bring in a bunch of users at the very beginning of their use of Solibri. They'll set them for deactivated and they'll only activate them when they're ready to be activated. So we can turn on and off if we need to. So let's just go back to regular users and then we can see everybody in the list again. Also, we can do that from the Excel sheet that I showed earlier as well. Some of the potential issues we get, administrators get hassled because people haven't received emails. Usually they have actually received the emails, they've just ignored them or deleted them. So there's a couple of quick things to check there. If somebody doesn't have a registration email, they need to check their junk or spam folder and have a look for any emails from noreply@solibri.com. The other thing they can do is if they have deleted the email and they really can't find it, then what they can do is go to the Solution Center, and I pointed out the forgot password link earlier on. If they click that link, that'll generate another email, it'll trigger another one, so they can then go through and finish their registration process. This final bit here, the existing users, I've already kind of mentioned that. So if somebody's already on a different account, when they come across, the administrator gets a message to explain they already exist on another account, would you like to migrate them? And similarly, the user gets an invitation that's slightly different from the standard one because it's offering them the option to switch from their current account to whatever account you've just invited them to. So if we move on and have a look at the licenses, there's a few tabs that we can take a look at in here. So most of this we can just do from in the PowerPoint. So the licenses tab just gives you an overall view of where you are right now. You can see that this is the UK account. Some of the stats from in here, and we demo these things so many times we end up with outrageous numbers of licenses and products and sorts of things all over the place. It is pretty much for information only. There is nothing that you can actually edit in here, but it just gives you an overview of where you stand at any particular time. The assignment tab, this bit really is crucial, and it's a vital part of what we do. So I've just added a user. Adding a user is one part of the process. Assigning a license is the second part of the process that absolutely must be done. So I'll jump back across to the Solution Center now. So I added Kenneth Bad, but as I say, that's the first part of the process. The next thing that I have to do is we can look at licenses. This shows where we stand right now and the extensions we have and the fact that there's none assigned. But if we go to assignment, this is where we must set this properly. So if I refresh right now, we get a lot of tabs going across here. The reality is today, we will only be using Solibri Office. We're not using any of the old versions or any of the depreciated versions. So we're in products, we're in Office. There would be site in here if there were site licenses on this account, but it is just Office. So we pick the product, we pick the version, click a refresh, and then these are all the users on the account, and this is what they currently have assigned. So the new user that I just added, which is this demo one here, I must assign 9.10 to that user, and then I must save the changes. Tells me it's updated, we can clear that message, and now that user can actually launch and run 9.10. If we don't assign it, when they launch the software, they get an error message and it pushes them into Solibri anywhere and they won't be able to get into the commercial product. So it's really important we do that. We also have to do the same thing for extensions. So Kobe, for example, if I take the platform and the UK resources and refresh that one, then what I can do is say that this particular user here, let's give them access. So Kobe, there's two parts that they need both because they can have the platform, but without the resources, they don't get very far. So we'll apply that one. We'll refresh, and what we'll do is also add the smartboard and VR. And what we'll do with this one is just assign all and assign all in here as well. So we'll save the changes. But what I did was only purchase 2 licenses. So at this point, I run into a bit of a problem because I can't assign this to everybody. So what I would actually have to do is go back and purchase additional licenses to make sure I can assign it to all people. You can have as many of these licenses as you like. The reality is on this account, there are only 2 physical licenses. So when we look at licenses here, we only have 2 actual floating licenses. We can have as many assignments as we need, but with only 2 licenses, you could have 10 assignments, but only the first 2 people to sign in actually get a license and are able to work. So, we have to make sure that we set the assignments properly. There are just a couple of other bits in there that you can filter by wishes and by pools. So this is the area that if there were wishes on the extensions, if we were just to select all of these and then show the wishes and refresh, then this would show what users have requested wishes for whatever product. There's none in here, so it's not actually very clear right now, but this is the additional filter that makes life a lot easier for you. So if I was to do that and refresh, then we would see anybody in here that's requested that. So let me jump back to the PowerPoint. So I can't stress enough how important it is to go through that assignment process and make sure licenses and extensions are assigned to users. The other part here is the user license details. So this one I've done a screenshot yesterday just to show an example of what you might see. And what this shows in this case here is it's a snapshot of a particular instance in time because the user license details is a live thing that updates within a few seconds of people signing in and signing out, and it's directly showing the status of where you are right now. So in this case, I was actually signed in twice on the same machine, but I was using 2 different pools. So I was using a site license and I was using a commercial license. Both of these is floating licenses. And then there was another user at the same time had borrowed a license until 31st of March. So you've got an idea of when that'll come available again if they don't return it before that time. So it's important that we check in here. As I say, it gives a live indication of where you are with floating licenses and borrowed licenses. There's also another type of workstation license, but it's not very common, so I haven't got any to include in here, but you might see that from time to time. And the only other thing with this is you need to keep an eye on this if you're going to be making changes in the Solution Center, because you can't edit the details for somebody who's currently signed in and doing things with a license at that particular stage in time. So you won't be able to do any assignments if somebody's live signed into Solibri at that particular time. On our account here, when I go to the user license details, we can see that first name, last name is signed in on this machine. And in fact, what that means is Solibri is running here. If I just exit out of Solibri and we sort of wait 3, 4, 5 seconds, if I hit refresh, you can see that user has already disappeared. So it's updated pretty quickly. It is just a matter of a few seconds to update. So moving on from that, the other area we can talk about is our user pools. And if you have, depending on the type of licenses you have, if you own the Solibri Office product or the Solibri Site product, then you have separate pools for each one. The pools are used in a whole variety of different ways. You can have multiple pools. It's a good idea to have multiple pools because it allows you to do things like either divide the costing of projects, so you can assign licenses to a particular project and it's costed that way. You can have teams, so that there may be a pool of 6 licenses in a company, but there's 2 licenses divided across 3 teams, so that there's always availability for each team. Or it's another way to prioritize. So you may have a couple of people that absolutely have to have a license at all times. So you could have them in some sort of priority pool where there are less licenses to fight over, or they always have a license available. But it's just a way of managing the licenses are distributed. So it's a fairly simple thing. The user pools here, there's only 2 of them, but we have the number of users and the number of licenses in each one. Because I've got nobody signed in right now, then what I could do is, well, I can't increase this one, but if I decrease this one, I can add into this one. So I can redistribute my 2 licenses by taking them out of one pool, putting them in another one, or just resetting it to where it was before. And if I just update that. So we can shuffle the licenses around. If we need to add more pools, we can add another one. So this would be that one there. So we've added another pool. But because I only have 2 licenses in this account, then I can't distribute more than 2. So I would have to take them out of one to put them in another. So it's a good excuse to buy lots more licenses, which, you know, I'm sure we're always happy to do. So coming back to this, final sort of tab on the whole Solution Center is the statistics. Hopefully that gets edited out of the recording. The statistics tab, and this is where we can go and report on the usage of the floating licenses. The borrowed licenses don't count because you borrow them for a time, not shows the time and not the usage. There's 4 types of reports. There's the peak reports, the usage per user, the used version, and the number of users. They each show slightly different things. I'll show you a couple of examples, pretty straightforward. So if I go to statistics, I'm finding, I don't know about everybody else elsewhere in the world, but as we're adjusting to everybody suddenly working from home and probably streaming Netflix and YouTube and whatever else goes on, there is actually a noticeable slowdown on the performance of just generally the internet. So I don't know what everybody else has found, but it's been quite interesting. So here are the report types. We can just go and grab, so something like peak reports. We can set a start and an end time. So typically this goes back a month from the day that you're on right now. But you can change that. You can set what time zone you're in. You can set the number of working hours. And then you can report either across all of the pools, which is something I'll need to do here because I've been in and out of both. And then I've only just added this 3rd one. But what I do, if I report that then goes and shows the usage. So because this account was actually only created yesterday, there's not going to be much to show. It shows the number of licenses. And if I go to the bottom of the list, which is yesterday, I didn't do anything yesterday. That's true. Yeah, because I only finished it this morning. So yeah, so there wasn't anything yesterday. So there is only today to report on, and there is only one sort of license that's done 8.98%. It's important, if you scroll across here, there's a couple of other things that it does show. So across here, we can see the total number of hours used. We can also see the denials count. So this one is actually really an important column, because that gives an indication of how many times somebody has tried to start the software and there's not been a license available. So it'll tell you how your software is being utilized. All of this stuff we can export to Excel, so you can start to build up a month by month or a week by week or project by project set of statistics. You can do the same sort of thing if I go back up here and change maybe to the usage per user report. I click the report button again, and it shows that the only person that's done anything is just this one project account here, from all of the pools and the number of hours that have been used, number of hours borrowed. They've denied access twice. So again, you're getting an indication of what's going on there. This can also be exported. There's not much to show in this account because it is a brand new account and I was only setting it up. So there's not a lot of minutes or hours to report back on, but you can have a play through these and see how they actually work for you and start to build up records that way. Final thing is just, this is not a real time. There is about a 30-minute delay on that information coming through because it takes a bit of time to process, but it's the sort of thing, if you run it on the 1st of every month, then you can report a month by month basis up to the day before. So it's quite a useful thing. We can report on all our selected pools, and as I said, you can export to Excel. So the final bit here is just a few notes of extra things to bear in mind. First one is, and it's less of an issue when people are working from home and using regular broadband or mobile phone connections, etc. In corporate environments, Solibri has to have access to these addresses and ports. So put them up here. If you run into any problems with this, I'll show you in a second how to contact support, and we'll give you more details on this side of things. But it is something to bear in mind that you do need access to this. So if people are going through VPNs, that may still have to be configured. In terms of finding out a bit more about what's happening, the most readily available information is on our social media channels. There'll be links to those in our various different, on the emails that have actually come through, you'll see the different channels that are available there. There's also these couple of links, so the help on our website, and also the release information about what's happened in the latest build that's been released in the last couple of weeks or whatever, and you can see a history of what's changed over time in there. Final bit is, if you do run into any problems, then you need to contact support. So even although all of our offices are essentially shut down and people are working remotely, we are still operating our regular support. People are just doing it from home rather than in an office. So basically anything that you run into problem-wise, you need to report to support@solibri.com. That then gets distributed to, depending on where you are or what partner you use, etc., etc. That gets sorted out. But if you're sending anything through, you should always, if you can get into Solibri, that is, use this file, help, and then copy to clipboard, and that captures all this basic information about the version, the builds, the operating system, the 3D, whatever it is, captures all of that. So copy that, stick it in the email, and also it's a good idea to send a zip of the log files that are in either application Solibri log, or they're in C program files, Solibri log in here. Again, if you run into any problems that way, if you can't find that, just send an initial email to support, and the response will come back and explain what's actually needed in there. But it's just to reassure you that this service is continuing as normal as possible. There might be slight delays because we are distributed to different places these days, but we are still picking these things up. So that is a run through of the various bits and pieces for the admin side of Solibri. Hopefully picked up where I managed to mute the microphone in the middle of things there. Apologies for that. But if you have any questions, feel free to send them across just now and I'll try and take a look at them. We covered the wishes. How do the wishes disappear is one of the questions. So if somebody requests something, that will show as a wish to the administrator. Once you've actually assigned that, the wish will disappear at that point, as long as you've assigned it to the appropriate users. Can the administrator add an additional administrator? Or does this have to be done by Solibri? No, and in fact, it's really important actually. From a Solibri point of view, from an HQ point of view, we cannot access any of your account information at all. We get the basic information like the name and the account number, and we can see information on the administrator names, but we're not able to do any sort of editing at all. In severe or extreme circumstances, if you're completely locked out of an account and there are things that can be done, but in essence, we don't have access to the inner workings of your accounts. That's confidential to you guys. Is it possible to add users previously registered for a trial? We can never add them even if them. Okay, so somebody that's been on a trial, they should migrate in the same sort of way. They would just receive an email that invites them to join your account. So that shouldn't be a problem at all. If you're still having problems with that, then if you send an email to support and include the details of your account and the email address that we're trying to bring into the account, then somebody can look at that and hopefully sort it out for you. There may be some issue if the trial is still active, but once the trial's expired, it shouldn't be a problem at all. Okay, so another question, trouble importing users from Excel, choosing to put. So one of the things I would say about when you're setting up the Excel sheet, do I still have it open? Bear with me. Let me just grab this one here. One of the things I would say is when you're setting up pools or anything like that, what I tend to do is just add in one example of each possible option here. So Solibri Assist, Project Assist, any other pools. And then what I do is copy paste them. Usually it is just there's an extra space in a pool or something strange like that one. But if you copy paste, then I've never had any problems with it that way. So give that a try, and again, if it needs followed up, we can do that. As well, a couple of questions. Is it possible to delete users? No, in essence, no. You can deactivate users, but they remain linked to the account. The only time they come out of the account is if they actually switch out to another completely different Solibri Solution Center account. So if they move from company to company, but even in that case, the likelihood is that they would only move their own personal email. They wouldn't be moving a company email because that'll expire when they leave the company. Are you able to see when a user last opened Solibri? The user reports. I think so, as you can probably tell from the stuttering. I would need to check, but we can certainly show how long a user has used the software on a particular day. So there would be a way to track that way. We can't do it on an individual user, but we can certainly report on a pool and then narrow down the Excel report to the individual user that way and do a little sort of lookup in that way. Okay. So there's a few similar questions about deleting users, about the dealing with wishes and how we assign those. What else have we got? There's a question here about migrating users from one account to another for companies with multiple departments and multiple accounts. That's probably something that we could discuss separately, depending on how that's set up. There's a couple of other factors and things there. There's not really any streamlining process other than you add them to an account, and that then generates the whole invite them from company 1 to company 2. But if you want, we can pick that up separately. Okay, so a couple back regarding the trial that's not able to migrate. Certainly drop us an email to support, even if you want to stick my name in it. I just reference the fact that we've discussed this in this session here, and we can take a look at that. It'll probably be forwarded to me to take a look at, but we can certainly have a look, because there will be a way to make it work somehow. Okay, so there's just a couple of other comments. There will be a recording of this. Hopefully all the stuttering and the blank bits cut out. That will be going on YouTube, and it will also be distributed to everybody who's registered, so you will get a copy that you can look back on. Okay, so any other questions? Okay, so I'll leave the session open, and yeah, it's ramping down. Okay, so if there is anything you want to follow up, as I say, you can email support, and there'll be contacts in the various different emails you've received as part of the registration process, etc. But thanks for your time, and stay safe, and maybe we'll see you tomorrow for the next session. Thanks for your time.